In this video, I will share with you how I approach goals effectively. Hopefully the insights that I've gained by losing over 100 pounds twice will help you so you don't have to stress and struggle as much as I did. But whether you're just starting out or looking for a new approach, I believe that this is the best way to do it. I mean, we all know the basics. Eat healthy, exercise, more calories out, less calories in. I mean, if it were really that simple, you probably wouldn't be watching this video. And most of us understand the concept of a goal. You have a target, you aim for it, and you shoot. So the problem with that thinking is that it doesn't address the emotional aspect of things and the reality of every day for most people. Weight loss journey deals with habits, it deals with behavior patterns, it deals with some heavy duty emotions at times, and mindset and personal belief shifts that can all be very, very intense, sometimes painful, and those things happen along the way, and you have to take those things into account. Change is hard, and sometimes it takes a tremendous amount of effort. No matter how strong-willed you are, sometimes one of the most resistant things we can be towards is change. That's why I have a system that has a little bit of a give. That way you can make mistakes, you can have setbacks, life can happen, but you're still constantly making progress. We're ultimately still setting goals, we're just doing it from a slightly different perspective. To me, the problem with goals is that they're very tightly defined things, and that if you don't hit that target in your very specific time frame, it can cause shame and guilt, and that can set you back sometimes even more than where you originally started. Guilt and shame trigger reward centers in the brain. So if you experience a sense of guilt, you will want to seek out something that makes you feel good. And usually for a lot of us, if you're here for the weight loss, it tends to be food that makes us feel a little bit better. The main problem with goals is that for the most part, you're actually existing in a failed state. Even if you do achieve that goal, for the most part, you spend your time in that not on target zone. And that can be very draining and exhausting, especially if you're tracking your progress very closely and you have very, very specific goals. And if you miss one, then oh crap, I'm gonna probably miss the next one. And then the future just tends to seem a little bit more and more bleak. Under those circumstances, a lot of the people who have achieved certain goals that they've had, a lot of the times they say you know what, when I achieved what I set out to do, it didn't even really feel that good. But that's because for the most part, for the 99% of the time, you felt pretty crappy about the process because you were always aware that you were not on target. So to solve that, I say focus on systems instead. Systems usually have boundaries, they have structure and a purpose. They're also very specific and they operate with fail-safes so that if something does go wrong, there's always a plan or a mechanism in place that will get you back on track. Systems ensure that you're never failing, but that instead you're always course correcting to get you back on track, to make sure that even if you are delayed a little bit in your process, even if you're sidetracked, or even if you come to a complete halt for a little bit, that you're still actually on the way to your ultimate outcome. Which brings me to my next point, which is milestones. Using milestones to track your progress throughout your journey makes sense for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, milestones imply that you're on a journey. And there's no guilt associated with you reaching a milestone maybe a little bit slower. Maybe you had a setback, so it took you a little bit longer to get there. But the point is the milestone always exists. And although you're still kind of operating in a certain time frame, it's not precise and it's not exact. And there's no sense of punishment or guilt or shame to be associated with getting there in your own time, which I think is critical. Whether you reach that 1 pound mark in a week or 2, it doesn't really matter. The point is you are still constantly in a state of achievement and in a state of progress. One of the benefits of thinking this way is that you are not ever experiencing a state of failure. It gives you the permission to say, you know what, I need a break, or I life happen and I have to put this to the side for a second, or I'm too stressed, or this or that. Like sometimes just life happens and it prevents us from doing things for whatever reason. And you know what? You don't even need to explain that to anybody. But the point is, in this type of thinking, there's room for that to happen. And when you say, you know what, it's okay if this happens, that just makes the whole journey like much more reasonable and much more flexible. And when you see it that way, you are 10 times more likely to actually get it done. This approach allows you to be a little bit less obsessive and a little bit less anxious about maybe, reaching that certain goal in a certain amount of time. It allows you to be comfortable throughout the journey, because it's more important to be feeling good during the process than stressed and anxious. I mean, it just depends on what works better for you. But I know for most people, when they have a long journey ahead of them, it's more important to be comfortable and allow room for a little bit of give than it is to be like hard fast on certain goals. An important consideration in all of this is actually time frames. We need to be grounded in reality, because ultimately systems are very specific. They have boundaries and they have a purpose. Realistic time frames are important. I mean, saying that you're going to lose 100 pounds in a month is impossible. I mean, I think the person would die if they tried. Losing 10 pounds is a little bit less realistic than losing 5. What do you think is a better outcome if you say you're going to lose 5 pounds and making that happen, or saying you're going to lose 10 pounds and let's say you only get to the 9-pound mark? What do you think is going to feel better? What do you think is going to ensure that for the next milestone or for the next leg of your journey that you're going to want to do it, that you're going to feel good about the process? Over time, I think it's these types of realistic milestones on a weight loss journey that either make or break people. It's not extreme and it's not like romantic or anything like that, but the most important thing is it's effective. The next thing is know thy enemy. It's important to identify what can you do to eliminate the triggers in your life that cause you to reach for certain foods. Is it you don't have time to eat a proper breakfast in the morning because you're waking up late? You hit the snooze button like 5 times. So you can mitigate that by saying, you know what, I'm going to put my alarm clock across the room so when the first one goes off, I have to get up. I have no choice, right? So then you have the time in the morning to actually make a healthy breakfast instead of grabbing, let's say, like a donut or a bagel with cream cheese and this and that, Sometimes it's really not about what you eat, but what's causing you to eat a certain way. Next, you're going to want to develop some stress management strategies. And that could be anything that works for you. It could be yoga, it could be reading, it could be going to therapy, it could be hanging out with friends, having a designated me time, anything that helps you decompress from the day and sort of has, where you have the opportunity to clear your mind. This is super, super important to have in place during a weight loss journey, because at the end of the day, you're going to go through some emotions and some very stressful situations and times that are going to be uncomfortable. And you need to be able to mitigate that with ways that you have in place that when such a thing happens, you know how to handle it and you say, you know what, like, I got this. I'm good. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to take my book and read it. I'm going to go take a bath, whatever works for you. So a big thing that was effective for me was actually to declutter my environment and clean up like everything that I just felt no longer either served me or felt like I could relate to. And sometimes we change over time, but everything around us, literally in our environment, stays the same. And it could add like this layer of stagnation to life. And we don't even notice that. It's just kind of on a subconscious. So at a certain point in my journey, I actually stopped, looked around, and I said, you know what, there's so much things around me that like I'm not into anymore. I don't care for. I just find kind of annoying and distracting. Or old clothes that I was holding on to that I was never gonna wear, but I held on just cause. Or I said, you know, like, what if I gain more weight back or something like that? I wanna have the options. So I said, you know what? If I haven't touched it in the last 2 years, it's gone, either garbage or the donation pile. I had a couple of garbage bags full and a bunch of like donation bags as well. And that made such a difference. When I was in the environment where I felt like at peace and relaxed and I wasn't like annoyed by the things in the room, that felt good and it helped tremendously. There are a ton of different ways that you can manage your stress. You just have to find what works for you, and you can sit down by, writing out a list of things you like to do, things you don't like to do, and then just kind of narrowing on things that you like to or prefer to do. And lastly, accept that a weight loss journey is going to be emotionally charged. Change is hard, and we don't like change. We tend to experience resistance towards it. We like to be in our comfort zones, even if our comfort zones aren't the best thing for us. The important thing to know is that if you do something 3 to 5 times, your brain doesn't register it as like a new thing anymore. It's not really a change. It's not something that we do. So it becomes a habit. And over time, our good habits replace our not so good ones. The key is you have to commit. It's not an easy change. You have to be disciplined at first about really putting yourself out there to do what needs to be done regardless of how you feel. It is a commitment to yourself. Just imagine how bad you feel when someone else lets you down when they promised you something. Well, when you do that to yourself, you actually feel that same impact. It's just not as obvious to us when we do it to ourselves. We feel it and experience that on like a subconscious level. So it manifests as having a negative impact on how we think about ourselves, and we kind of go into like a self-sabotage mode and into sometimes even depression because we've let ourselves down, but it's not that obvious to us. This is why committing to yourself and being disciplined about those commitments is really, really important. And this is especially true in the beginning of a weight loss journey. And you'll see the more you do this and the more you stick with it and take action on these commitments, you'll actually start to feel better and better about yourself. And over time, you'll come to realize that that's what really true self-love is honoring the commitments that you make to yourself. That is probably one of the most life-changing things that I've learned about during my weight loss journey. And one of the most important things along the way is to recognize that you are human. You're bound to make mistakes. Mistakes are okay to make. And there's no sense in punishing yourself for ultimately trying to make your life better. And sometimes it takes more than one attempt, and there's nothing wrong with that. So thank you for tuning in. I hope this video helped you out at least a little bit. And if it did, give the video a thumbs up. If you want to show me support, subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell to make sure you get notified when I post a new video. I hope you have a stellar day or night, and I will see you back here in my next video. Bye.